Most states in America spend less than $3 a day feeding each prisoner. Some spend as little as $1.02. That's breakfast, lunch, and dinner for a grown adult on what most people wouldn't spend on a gas station coffee. So when the meals taste like they were prepared by someone who genuinely hates you, and that's a direct quote from an actual inmate, what do? You learn to cook. But here's the problem nobody talks about. There are no stoves, no ovens, no burners. In some facilities, not even a microwave. Just concrete walls, a power outlet, and whatever you can buy from a commissary that looks more like a 7-Eleven snack aisle than a grocery store. And yet, behind those walls, people are making tamales, pizza, pad thai, even fried chicken, without a single piece of cooking equipment. This is how they do it. The first thing most inmates learn about is the hot pot. It's a small plastic device, costs about $18 from the prison commissary, and it's designed to heat water. Sounds simple enough. But here's the thing about hot pots in prison. They're deliberately designed not to boil water. There's a thermostat built in that cuts the heat right before the water reaches 212 degrees. The system gives inmates just enough to make instant coffee, but not enough to actually cook anything. Think about that for a second. They sell raw macaroni in the commissary, but the device they sell to heat water can't actually get hot enough to cook it. Sounds backwards, right? But that's the reality of the prison food system, a place where the rules and the resources are constantly at odds with each other. So, what happens? Inmates figure out how to bypass the thermostat. They crack open the hot pot, rewire around the temperature sensor, and suddenly that $18 gadget is boiling water like it was always supposed to. The guards know about it. They confiscate it when they find it because it's now classified as an altered item. The inmate loses the hot pot, saves up, buys another one, and the whole cycle starts over. One former inmate described losing dozens of hot pots over the course of a decade. Dozens. Each time he'd just start over. But not everybody has $18. In a system where some inmates earn as little as $3 a month for full-time labor, that hot pot might as well cost $1,000. And that's where things get really interesting. For inmates who can't afford a hot pot, or who've had theirs confiscated one too many times, there's the stinger. And it's exactly as terrifying as it sounds. A stinger is a homemade immersion heater. Take a power cord, usually stripped from a lamp, a fan, or a radio. Cut off the end. Peel back the insulation to expose the 2 copper wires inside. Then attach a piece of metal to each wire. The most common choice? A pair of nail clippers snapped in half. One half on each wire, separated by a small piece of plastic so the 2 metal pieces don't touch each other. Now plug it in and drop the metal ends into a cup of water. The science behind it is surprisingly elegant. The current passes through the water, the resistance generates heat, and the whole thing acts like an electric kettle that was built by someone with zero regard for personal safety. Add a pinch of salt to the water, and it boils even faster. The salt increases conductivity, allowing the current to flow more efficiently. That principle was first measured by Michael Faraday over 200 years ago. The inmates just figured it out on their own. A stinger can bring a cup of water to a rolling boil in under 2 minutes. That's faster than most kitchen kettles. Pretty clever, right? But here's the part nobody advertises. Touch the water while the stinger is plugged in, and the electrical current goes straight through your body. It can blow out the power to an entire cell block, and there are no safety features, no ground fault protection, no off switch. Are just raw electricity running through an open container of water, held together with nail clippers and hope. Former inmates describe it casually. One guy put it this way: yes, they'll shock you if you touch the water, and they can blow out the electricity, but you expect it, like it's just a known cost of doing business, the same way someone on the outside might burn their hand on a hot stove. Except this particular stove could kill you. But when your other option is cold ramen and lukewarm tap water. For the next 5 to 10 years, the math starts to make a different kind of sense. Some inmates take the hot pot hack even further. Instead of just bypassing the thermostat, they disassemble the entire device and remove the heating coil from inside. Then they mount that coil onto an empty can, usually a roast beef or tuna can, with a hole punched through the side. What they've created is essentially a miniature electric grill. Inmates call it an eye. It sits flat, heats evenly, and can actually cook food rather than just boil water. With an eye, you can sauté, you can fry, you can make things that would be impossible with boiling water alone. Here's the thing about the eye. The guards mostly leave them alone. They know it's just for cooking. It's one of those unwritten arrangements that exist inside the walls, where enforcement bends just enough to keep the peace. A man who can cook a decent meal is a man who's less likely to cause problems. The institution may never admit it, but they understand that. The bigger challenge is finding something to cook in. Standard commissary bowls are small and flimsy, so inmates steal the large 6-pound tuna cans from the prison kitchen warehouse. Getting one out requires timing. You have to intercept the can before it hits the compactor and gets crushed, then smuggle it past the checkpoints and back to your cell. But what about the facilities with no power outlets in the cells? No hot pots? No stingers? No eyes? What then? This is where prison cooking gets genuinely creative. Most prisons have hot water taps. Not boiling, usually somewhere around 170 degrees, but hot enough to work with if you're patient and know what you're doing. The trick is insulation. Inmates take a clean trash bag, a heavy-duty one, are the same kind used as a suitcase when prisoners transfer between facilities. They crush ramen noodles inside the package, dump them into the bag along with whatever other ingredients they have, then pour in the hot water. The bag gets sealed tight, wrapped in a towel or a shirt, and then tucked under a mattress. And then they wait. The towel acts as insulation, trapping the heat inside. The mattress adds another layer of thermal mass. In 15 to 30 minutes, the food cooks through, not from an external heat source, but from the retained heat of the water itself. It's the same principle behind a haybox cooker, a technique that's been used in outdoor survival for centuries. The inmates just adapted it to a 6x9 cell. One inmate at Tehachapi State Prison described his method with the precision of a recipe card. On 2 16-ounce cups of hot water, tie off the bag, wrap it in a towel, set it aside for up to 30 minutes to let it fully cook through. No guesswork, no vague instructions, just the kind of knowledge that comes from doing the same thing every single night for years. Another former inmate talked about using this method to make chicken and dumplings in a prison microwave. Once the dumplings were almost done, he'd wrap the whole bowl in a clean garbage bag, then layer towels around it. The residual heat would finish cooking the dumplings while the stock thickened from the flour. He said he figured it all out through trial and error, though mostly through error. In prisons that have communal microwaves, and many do, though the access rules vary wildly by security level, a completely different cooking culture emerges. These facilities typically have 1 or 2 microwaves shared between 30 to 40 inmates. That creates a bottleneck that turns cooking into a logistical operation. You have to plan your meals around when the microwave is available. You have to negotiate with the other inmates in your dorm for cooking time, and you have to work fast because there's always someone waiting behind you. But with microwave access, the menu expands dramatically. Inmates make pizza using crushed ramen noodles and crackers as a crust, molded into shape with hot water inside a trash bag, then topped with whatever the commissary and the kitchen can provide. Cheese spread, summer sausage, salsa. They make jailhouse tamales by crushing Frito corn chips and hot Cheetos together, adding just enough hot water to form a thick dough, and then shaping it inside the chip bag and running hot water over it. They make a version of pad thai with ramen noodles, peanut butter, and hot sauce. fried rice with commissary rice, and whatever vegetables they can smuggle out of the kitchen. One man even made a roast chicken using an upside-down pot as a makeshift oven on an induction stove. The real centerpiece, though, is the spread. The spread is the most iconic meal in American prison culture. It's a communal feast built from everyone's commissary contributions: ramen noodles, crushed chips, canned meat, cheese, chili, hot sauce, all mixed together in a large trash bag. Everyone puts something in. The person who eats last has to clean up. That's the unwritten rule. A spread can feed 4 or 5 people. It's high calorie, high sodium, and about as far from fine dining as you can get. But inside those walls, it's a celebration. Birthdays, good news from a lawyer, someone making parole, the spread marks the occasions worth marking. Here's where the cooking connects to something bigger than just food. Ramen noodles have replaced cigarettes as the primary currency in American prisons. A study from the University of Arizona tracked this shift across inmate populations, security levels, racial groups, and even different states. The researcher found that packets of ramen, called soups, had overtaken tobacco, stamps, and envelopes as the preferred medium of exchange. And the reason wasn't smoking bans. Even in prisons where tobacco was still allowed, ramen was winning. The reason was hunger. As prison food budgets got slashed and food services were outsourced to private companies competing to offer the lowest price, the meals got worse. Smaller portions, lower quality, food that inmates described as barely edible. One prison food contractor bragged about cutting the cost per tray from $2 down to $1.25. And the difference showed up on the plate. So ramen became money because ramen became survival. It's cheap, it's durable, it doesn't spoil. And at about 400 calories per pack, it fills the gap between what the prison provides and what a human body actually needs. Inmates use soups to pay for laundry service, cell cleaning, gambling debts, haircuts. How well a man is doing financially can be measured by how many soups are stacked in his locker. 20 soups? That guy's doing well. The economy even has credit. Inmates rack up debt with people who hold large ramen reserves, earn higher credit limits, and refinance their soup debts with different holders. It's a shadow financial system built entirely on instant noodles and hunger. But cooking from commissary alone has its limits. The commissary menu is mostly junk food: chips, snacks, processed meat sticks, ramen, coffee. Fresh ingredients are almost non-existent. No onions, no peppers, no garlic, nothing green. So there's a supply chain for that, too. Inmates who work in the prison kitchen, often for pennies an hour or nothing at all, become the suppliers. They take onions, bell peppers, tomatoes, broccoli, cabbage, and chicken out of the kitchen. Not in big, obvious loads. Everything gets concealed and moved through checkpoints by runners, inmates who figured out the timing of guard searches and know which routes are watched and which aren't. 10 pieces of chicken can't just go under your shirt in a visible lump. The logistics of getting a single onion from the kitchen to a housing unit require the kind of operational planning that would impress a supply chain manager. The kitchen workers sell what they smuggle to inmates who have commissary money. The runners take a cut. And the cooks, the inmates who've earned a reputation for making good food, use those fresh ingredients to turn commissary basics into something that actually tastes like a real meal. Italian-Americans make spaghetti with marinara using packaged meats, slicing their garlic with illicit razors. A nod to the prison scene in Goodfellas. Hispanic inmates combine canned octopus and squid from commissary with smuggled rice and spices to make their version of paella. One former inmate described a Mexican inmate named Lucky who made tamales so good that he ran a business selling them across different housing units, using crushed Doritos ground to dust as a substitute for masa. The entire operation runs on trust, reputation, and the understanding that food is one of the few things inside those walls that makes life bearable. There's a quote from Fyodor Dostoevsky that says the degree of civilization in a society can be judged by entering its prisons. If that's true, then the rise of ramen as currency, the fact that inmates had to overhaul a monetary system that had been in place since the Civil War just to feed themselves, tells a story that goes well beyond cooking techniques. When a man builds an electrical heating device out of nail clippers and a lamp cord to boil water for a 25-cent packet of noodles, he's not just making dinner. He's exercising the one form of control he has left. Choosing what to eat, how to make it, and who to share it with becomes an act of agency in a system designed to remove it. Former inmates describe cooking as the closest thing to freedom they experienced behind bars. One man said that when he sat down to eat a bowl of chicken and dumplings he'd made from commissary chicken and smuggled flour, he closed his eyes, and for a few minutes, he wasn't inside anymore. The food transported him. 94% of formerly incarcerated people surveyed said they never had enough to eat to feel full while they were locked up. 94%. And over 95% of those people will eventually return to their communities. The ingenuity is remarkable. The resilience is undeniable. But the fact that it's necessary at all, that people have to risk electrocution from a homemade stinger just to have a hot meal, that says something about the system that goes far beyond a cooking hack. And it raises a question that doesn't have an easy answer. If a society is judged by how it feeds its prisoners, what does $3 a day say about us?